Saint Onufrios is one of the greatest ascetic figures of the Egyptian deserts. Onufrios, according to his biographer, the holy Paphnutius, came from Persia. So, according to Saint Paphnutios, the father of Saint Onufrios was a king of Persia. His mother was barren and they both begged God to give them an heir. After many prayers God heard them, and when his mother conceived there was great joy in the palace. After the pregnancy, his father saw a divine revelation that urged him to name the child Onufrios in holy baptism. Then to lead it to a monastery in Thebes, Egypt. This is what the saint's father did. While he was going with servants to Egypt, they were accompanied by divine grace and will by a doe who fed the young with her milk during the whole journey, to the admiration and surprise of all. When they arrived at the monastery, the father of Saint Onufrios reported everything to the abbot of the monastery, and he said, "A woman here never came close. How is it possible to feed the child?" The saint's father answered, "Just as the Lord spared and accompanied us all the way the doe that nursed him, so again by divine command he will come here daily to nurse him, until he grows up." So the abbot agreed, and Onufrios stayed in that congregation. His father left for the palace, and the doe came every day until the 3rd year and nursed him. Saint Onufrios remained attached to God and did not depart from him, and became great and great after that. He accepted every kind of temptation with great patience and joy, and the successive calamities he endured with great courage. Trials purified and sanctified him as fire refines gold. Even as a child he showed a burning desire for total dedication to God. At a young age, he joined a commune brotherhood, where for several years he practiced spiritual and physical temperance and obedience. His great humility made his brothers love him very much. When Onufrios grew older, he wanted to go deeper into the desert, to get to know and imitate the life of the ascetics there. Saint Onufrios at the beginning of his solitary state enters commune near Hermopoli in Thebes. The congregational system is a stricter form of the Laureatic and was formed under Saint Pachomius the Great in the 4th century in Egypt. More specifically, Saint Onufrios, before he left for the desert, lived in a large monastery of monks, called Shmon, in Upper Egypt, on the borders of Oxyrhynchus. 150 monks lived there, observing the monastic order and purity. Their Abba Onufrios learned monasticism, next to the other divine elders who had reached perfection and lived like the angels of God. There he heard about the quiet and solitary life of two great figures of our church, the ascetic and solitary life of the prophet Elias of Thespetis and his imitator John the forerunner and preparer of the presence of Christ, who, like Elias, wearing ascetic clothing and following the hermit life, he proclaimed to the people the baptism of repentance. Later, with the blessing of his elder, he retired to the desert. After walking a long way through the desert, he came upon the hermit's hut, which by divine revelation awaited him. Hermias led him to a hut, under a huge palm tree, next to which the waters of a clear spring flowed. There Onufrios indulged in greater spiritual exercise, and his fame spread to all the hermits, who often went to consult him and receive his wish. By exercising in grace he cleansed his soul of passions and reached enlightenment and deification. The saint fed on grasses and his clothing was made of palm leaves. The uncreated grace of God flooded his entire being, his soul and his body, and that is why his tabernacle after his osial sleep was fragrant. Saint Onufrios, excited by the hermit life and asceticism, mortified his earthly members, and by enduring the frost of the night and the heat of the day, he attained the heavenly life, seeing, as his hymn writer emphasizes, the unfathomable beauty of his Creator. He lived in the desert for about 60 years, having as food temperance and as wealth poverty and landlessness. Saint Onufrios wore Jesus Christ as his garment, at the urging of the Apostle Paul. Saint Onufrios fainted many times in the desert, he was exhausted many times from hunger, thirst, the cold of the night and the sunshine of the day. His body was baked under the sun of heaven. When God saw that he had suffered enough from this war, he sent his angel to take care of his food, and every day he brought him something to support his body. In that place in the desert where Saint Onufrios practiced there was a date tree that produced 12 bunches of dates a year. A large bunch of dates fell every month on the saint. There were even some grasses and some other small plants whose leaves had a wonderful taste in his mouth that resembled that of honey. Once, Abba Paphnutios visited Saint Onufrios. The two ascetics enjoyed each other's presence, exchanged experiences and strengthened themselves spiritually. However, God saved things in this way so that this meeting coincided with the time of the exit of Saint Onufrios, and thus his body was buried by Abba Paphnutios under the great palm tree, and his soul rests in heaven after all of the saints. Thus, he reminded everyone of the words of the Apostle Paul, "Train yourself for godliness." That is, exercise and accustom yourself to the constant practice of the holy life. Saint Paphnutius buried Saint Onufrios after his death, after he tore his own poor garment in two and wrapped half of it around the naked body of Osios covered with white hair and kept the other half to cover his own body. That is how Saint Onufrios left for the next life, without a tunic, not only observing but also surpassing the Lord's commandment. He who has 2 tunics should pass on to the unholy, and he who has odors should do the same, since he was found naked at the end of his life. Saint Onufrios received in his heart the imaginable and heavenly light and proved to be a vessel of the imperishable triune Godhead, and is now numbered with the angels and sings loudly the doxological hymn Alleluia. Saint Onufrios ended his life here on June 12, the day on which our Orthodox Church honors and upholds his memory together with the memory of the Holy Father Peter of Mount Athos.